Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Jump right in here. Bram and Cat. There we go. And this is Patch for Beginners. So when we started this cycle of identifying patch management, we identified 4 primary tenets to any patch management solution that we wanted to do, which was identification, a way for the Jamf Pro to pick up on software that was installed in the environment or we wanted to install in the environment, a method to package it, a way to upload it into the JSS, and a way to actually apply that patch out to specific clients. In 993, we actually identified, we started with the identification portion of it, and you can actually see this here. You can actually see the video. Okay, so you can select from software title and actually select it out of our list. JSS actually takes this down and starts a calculation. In this JSS, there's 10,000 devices. And then you can actually go into a patch report, and on a refresh, it takes a little while to calculate as it's going through all these things. And I did not speed it up. So we can see all the devices that have this particular title. And we can identify versions, the number of devices on that version, and from the list, graphs, everything like that, put it on your dashboard. Currently, we have 42 titles that do this exact same thing. You can pick from a list downloaded from Jamf Nation. All these titles are verified and tested by our engineers and updated daily. When these things are tested, they come out over the air. You're actually subscribed to a Jamf Nation URL, and you're notified of that change. So the patch definitions that come down contain either information that we already have in the JSS or extension attributes. And the information is then allowed us to do detailed reporting on those things. And with that, we can create smart groups or things like that, criteria that allows us to scope to a particular application. So after 993, what have we been working on? The remaining 3, packaging, uploading, and application. Yeah. Next one. So packaging and uploading. Basically, the solution we're coming out with today, or in 10, is using the same procedure that we have currently as policy. So you take a package that you have existing, upload it to the JSS, and choose it. Same thing you do with a policy. Normally things that you already probably have if you're using the patch reporting as it is in the current state. The only thing different is the new location. Next slide. So we navigate to the patch title, and inside of it is the definitions tab. So in definitions, we have an array of all the versions that we've identified from that vendor. We can actually edit the screen, and you get an add button on the right side there. So if we go to a software title that we know, we click the add button. And then you get a list of the packages that you already had in the JSS. So things that you'd have in a policy would actually show up, JSS objects. We select it, and now it is corresponding to the actual software version that you have. Clicking save actually enables us to activate the patch policies tab. So to talk about patch policies.
All right. So I'm going to stand a little bit awkwardly to the side because my parents ordered me extra short, so you can't see me behind the podium. So in the last versions of Jamf Pro 10, you were using smart groups and creating policies and scoping the policies to those smart groups for an update to deploy out. Well, in version 10, we're trying to take a little bit of that work away from you. Instead of creating a traditional policy, you'll be using the built-in patch policies to deploy an update. So let's talk about how they are the same and a little bit different from standard policies. They still work just like regular policies. They are called using the Jamf binary and on a policy, they run on a policy trigger. But instead of creating a smart group, the devices that need an update are actually automatically calculated, and you can easily see which devices need an update. Like a regular policy, they are still scopable as well. So let's start by talking a little bit about scope. Traditionally, we've always had targets, limitations, and exclusions. And this allows you to break up exactly who is getting a particular policy. Targets could be individual devices, computer groups, buildings, departments, users, or user groups. Limitations allow you to scope to a specific target, but limit it by a network segment or a iBeacon region. And then finally, you have exclusions. And exclusions allow you to use all of the same criteria from targets and limitations to exclude a specific group from a policy. Well, with Jamf Pro version 10, patch management brings in a new type of device. We now have eligible devices. So instead of scoping to all and limiting to devices that need a specific patch, or creating a smart group to capture which devices need an update, this will read the application version in the inventory record and automatically calculate which devices require an update for a specific application. Targets added to the patch policy are actually automatically scoped and limited to those eligible computers. So if you add the human resources department to a patch policy, only the devices that actually require an update in that human resources department will receive that policy. So here we see a list of eligible devices for the Google Chrome update. We see the device name, OS version, as well as the installed version of the application and the most recent check-in and inventory update. This allows you to see the most accurate, up-to-date information as well. So in order to see this list of eligible devices, you will have to first set up a patch policy and save it. After it's saved, you can go back into the patch policy under scope, and up at the top after you hit edit, you'll see a little blue box, and in that blue box will be some additional information as well as that link to click on that list of eligible devices. All right, so we've talked about how to set up a patch policy and how to scope them. And you may want to deploy out a patch, but not to every eligible device in your environment. Best practice suggests using a test group and making sure that the patch is valid before mass deployment. Well, with patch policies, that is an option as well. So taking a look at the patch policy page, we can see that you can create multiple patch policies for an individual application. Here for Chrome, we have it set to automatically update 2 testing groups as well as our production group. Like a regular policy, you have the capability of enabling or disabling a policy. And on this page, we're able to easily see which ones have been enabled, as well as any completed, failed, or pending policies. This makes testing a patch before deploying to your whole production environment a lot easier. So at this point, we've got our patch policy set up. We've gone through 2 rounds of testing, and now we're ready to enable it for a mass deployment to all of our production machines. And there are 3 ways that your end users could get that patch. The first one we're going to take a look at is to scope the policy to self-service and have the end users actually install it on their own. Now I'm going to play you 2 videos, and they are on a blank gray screen. They haven't finished loading, or they have finished loading. There's not a mistake there. I just wanted to be able to the people in the back to see the notification a little bit easier. All right. So here we have notification set up to show on the Max Notification Center as well as inside of self-service. So when the end user gets the prompt, they hit show, and it will take them into self-service. We can see up at the top that there is an update available. It has a 1 next to the update section, and it makes it even easier to let your end users know just at a quick glance. So after the end user hits the update button, it does change from update to updating, and this is sped up. Your patches won't happen that fast. But now that it's complete, it does give your end users a done as well, so they know that the update has happened. The one next to updates at the top is now gone, and the self-service page shows no patches available. Another option for updating is to automatically install this patch. In this one, there we go. In this example, we are still using the Max notification system to let the user know that Google Chrome has an update available. And it will need to quit in order to update. So they're going to get the warning that there is a Google Chrome update. I gave this one a 5-minute delay and sped the process up once again so that we don't have to wait 5 minutes. But your end user will have the application quit on them. So when you are setting your patch policy, it will let you know actually what apps have to quit in order for that patch policy to go through. The last method is actually just to have a patch install automatically and not have the end user receive any notification. The end user does not see any update was required. It all just happens for them. Any apps that are on that list that will have to quit when you deploy the patch policy will still close on the end user. And that is patch policy, or patch for beginners. We're going to go ahead and take those questions. Like Linnea said, we've got 2 microphones down on the end of the stage. So feel free to come on up and ask some questions. All right.
Just on the policy, you just showed no deferral option inside of patch policies? Or did I miss that? Okay. All right.
You can, I think go as low as 2, 1. I think 1 is the lowest you can go in the deferral.
Right.
1 minute.
Are you able to use the eligible groups outside of patch policies and other policies?
Right now, we have a smart group criteria that you can use greater than, less than. You won't be able to use eligible for a particular patch because it's already actually filled in as part of that eligibility. So you're looking for a particular has Google Chrome version, whatever, as part of that patch policy. So it's actually calculated based upon the version of the application you're deploying to.
Okay, so it has to be in the patch policy then.
Correct, yeah, you won't be able to use the eligible list in just a standard policy to deploy something else out. It's only in patch policy.
The automatic, to be of note, the eligible calculation is actually the software title with the version. So you have that criteria ability in smart groups as it is right now.
We always have an issue with our users. They're always complaining that the notification message goes away too fast. Is there any way to have that notification pop up in a separate window or something that doesn't rely on Apple's notification, because it seems to come up and go away before they even look at it, and they're, you know.
Or not at all, if they disabled the notifications. Not in this implementation, but it's a great feature request.
You may be able to find some third-party options for that as well.
I was actually just wondering, so no one here is perfect. I've botched up deployments all over. How do we revert back and just pull something out? Is there an easy way to do that?
Yes, there's actually a downgrade button as part of the definition. So you can actually, depending on what you deployed, if you went up or down, you could downgrade someone to a particular version and then hold people at that.
And the whole, I mean, but are you talking about the entire scope now gets done that, or can you do it individually, or is it up on the JSS? Is it in self-service?
It's per patch policy, so in each patch policy you can downgrade, and then you have control over the scope. So you can have multiple overlapping, is kind of what we showed was alpha, beta, and production. If you chose, you could disable alpha and beta and then move everyone to a production version.
Are there any options to upgrade like the OS level or more system level utilities?
Not presently. It is something that we have looked at before.
Okay.
Where can we find the specs on the firewall to get patch management to work? Because I've run into a problem when things were blocked with the cloud connectivity.
Yeah, in case you didn't hear it, he wanted to know about specs, ports, URLs being used for what the JS actually uses to subscribe to a patch. There's actually a nice KB up on Jamf Nation. I think it's just, if you just search patch, there's a KB for the ports used, the URLs, and stuff like that.
So I got to go to security and get all that unlocked. Thanks.
Yep.
So we currently use Jamf Helper to do notifications for patches, and we have a custom sort of workflow that allows user to delay for say an hour or whatever. Is there a plan to support, I guess, in-house notification workflow like that with this new patch policies?
Right now we're just using Notification Center using push messaging, so Apple's push messaging, so you'd have push proxy in the JSS. Are you talking about third parties? Use like Cocoa or?
Sure.
It's not something we have talked about, so it might be worth bringing it up. John Miller has a session at Thursday at 1:30 where he goes over the future of patch, and that'll be a great place to ask.
I think the gentleman on the other side asked, but I'll still extend my question. You said none for OS patching? So we
At this time, no. Also a great topic to bring up at the future.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big, we get a lot of questions from security saying, give us a list of all the updates that came from Apple. And so today there's no way to report on those or pull up on patches?
Within the patch management tab, no. In the JSS, there's software update, where you can actually do reporting based upon the number of updates that are available, or I think there's an inventory display item that shows you the patches that are, or the software titles that are,
it's very
software
limited.
updates that are available.
And you mentioned 43 titles. Is there a way to add to that or request for? So if we know, for instance, what patch came through Apple, can we add that in and report off that?
It's definitely something we're looking into, and I would go to that 130 session. Actually, the 130 session. Right now, the titles that we have right here are curated by Jamf, so they've been tested, verified, so downloaded, installed, run through recon, and verify that those are the versions. So all those titles are currently, we do take feature requests on which titles we go against. Those are just the 42 most common that we came across. But yeah, so there's some future stuff that might play into that where I won't get into at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question. If you enforce a login for self-service, do you still see the notifications? And if you do, what happens when you force an item to install by a certain date or time?
So they would still see the notification because that just goes through the Mac notifications that it's available. When they clicked show, it would take them to self-service and they would have to log in order to see the update. But if you have something that's deploying out and installing automatically, so the second example we had where they saw the notification but it didn't require any end user interaction, that can still happen even with the self-service login because it's actually bypassing self-service entirely and just using the Jamf binary to install.
I was just saying in the case that you actually offer as a self-service but also want to force it by a certain date.
So for that, you would actually have to set up two different patch policies. One to show up in self-service, and then when you were ready to switch over to the automatic install, you would disable the self-service one and enable your automatic install one.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Yeah.
So the very last version of any application that's put out there, you said it's been tested and verified by Jamf, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So is there usually a time gap between the latest that's out there and before it shows up in patch management?
Yes, because it does go through a verification process. We have multiple curators that actually check each other off and then get verified outside of themselves. So yeah, there is a delay in that in verifying which versions are coming down and if it's available.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm not sure if I missed it, but if there's a failed deployment of a patch, do you have, is there like a retry button or try it again after to push? And if there, is there like a self-healing thing if the patch got pushed and then it messed up the...
Sorry to cut you off. The one thing we didn't show is that there's a section in settings for patch management, and there's actually max number of retries that you'd like. So by default it's 3, and after 3 fails on a particular version, it will cut off that device, so it'll stay in failed until you manually remediate it. If you change the version of a particular patch policy, so those things are live, you can choose from a list to promote something or downvote something. That will reset that logic, and then that retry counter will go again. So if you have 100% failure, it's pretty easy to see in the logs, and then you can actually just edit and save and retry it again if you want to choose a different package.
And does it show the failed push in the dashboard as well?
Right now, you'd go into logs and you'd see the deployment failed, but you'd see the list right there in patch policies. You can put that in dashboard.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I came in a little late. I may have missed it, but is there or will there be in a future release the ability to add a patch policy for, like, say, homegrown software or software that doesn't quite fit the current 42 applications? So, for example, maybe something that comes from Homebrew, or maybe a Unix-based application that's available for the Mac that doesn't live in the /applications directory. Something where you can pull version number in an extension attribute and report against it. Will we have that ability to put that into patch management?
I can't talk to that. There's a 4 o'clock session that you might want to attend from Ben that might have something. I think John is in that session as well. John Miller is the project manager for patch at this point, Team Argonne. If not, then it would be the 1:30 on Thursday where he's leading that session about the future of patch, so he gives a sneak peek about stuff.
Thanks.
I might have missed it too, but just a quick question. Once you send the policy through, does the inventory update? Is it like, so that if you do send out an application, you just be like a recon and update your inventory? After you do the patching for a new application, does it update the inventory?
Yes, it's actually on the lookout anytime that the device becomes an eligible device. It continues to update inventory on the device until the next thing happens to it.
Thank you.
Yeah, one more question about the verification process. Is there do you have resources, or will you be making resources available that I can hand over to InfoSec to find out exactly what your verification process is? And will we be able to, for instance, pull a checksum from Jamf Nation and compare that against the checksum in a package that's being brought down, man in the middle and all that kind of?
Yeah, so one clarification there is that we're not actually packaging. You'd still be doing your own packaging at this point.
Okay.
The checksum is live, and there's a repository, the URL inside the KB. You can actually navigate it as just JSON. So you can,
validate it from there.
You can validate the versioning. Checksumming would still be handled by the vendor.
Okay, all right.
For something like Google Chrome, where I would want all my users to have it anyway, is there ability to tell a patch policy to install that if it doesn't find the program?
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
It wouldn't, because it's only going to look for, so the question was, can it use patch policy to install it basically for the first time? No, I was going to say, because it's only going to look for eligible devices, so it has to have some sort of way to verify the eligibility of the device.
So there's criteria behind the scenes that it's actually calculating. You'd have to trick it, basically, to do things like that. But
it can look for unknown versions, but it still has to have Google Chrome somewhere to even find an unknown version.
Hi. On our Windows side, through WSIS, we have a canary group, and then what we do is a hands-off approach to doing the production instance, where if we don't tell it not to apply to the, to the general group after 7 days of the canary group getting it, then the policy is automatically applied. So unless something goes wrong, once we get an update push from Windows, then it'll go out after 7 days to everybody. Is it similar to set up? I know that you can do the canary group in this sense with a different patch policy, but can you set the broader release patch policy to be set on a timer from a different patch policy, so we don't have to go in there and tell it to push every time we get, on some of those where they come out a little more rapid, like Chrome, for example?
at this time, no, there's no automatic sense to it. There would still be admin intervention to change the versions but they can be overlapped. So you can have your alpha overlap your beta that overlaps your production, so you can increment as you go.
Thanks.
Hi, thank you for presenting. My question is, in the scenario where you give the users a 5-minute warning before an automation of patch up management takes over, in a scenario of some applications who doesn't use the native OS resume, like Microsoft products, where when it quits and you don't have a file save, it presents a dialog and things like that. Is there something to take care of things like that, where if the user walks off from the station and forgot to save and that didn't see that 5-minute warning and the execution comes and tries and quit the app, does it just quit the app through some in-house method that you guys cooked up, or does it just basically prevent the whole thing to continue and go through?
So hypothetically, you could set it to 9999, and it's actually looping in the background, waiting for the app to quit. So as soon as the user closes the app, it will install the update. So
is that something to do with the three retries? That is the option that's available within the
It's suspended. So as soon as the automatic hits, it's actually suspended, waiting for you. It's already downloaded and verified that it got the right version, and it's just waiting for you to close the or waiting for the end user to close the app before it actually installs. So it's not a failure until the connection's broken to the JSS.
Will they receive a notification that it's still pending, like another 5-minute notification comes up telling them to hey, quit or something?
No, but that's a great feature request to reprompt.
All right, thanks.
Hi, a question was partially answered earlier about what an eligible device actually is. So if something doesn't have the software already, is there anything in patch that can be used to create a policy for a piece of software that is always the latest version of that software? If you see what I mean. So Google Chrome, sure, if they already have it, it'll get updated to the latest version. But if they don't have it at all, I want a self-service item that's always the latest version.
It's not really built into patch policy for that. By default, no matter what you scope to that patch policy, whether it's all devices or a specific group, by default, only eligible devices are going to get that patch. So you would still have to create a separate policy to have the latest version of Google Chrome available in self-service. There's not really an overlap between what you're seeing in patch policies and what you have as a policy to deploy as a first round for a particular piece of software.
But is there something in smart groups or something that I can use the patch version?
Yeah, you can use the smart group as latest.
Okay.
So you can use patch title and then whatever your title is, latest. And that will tell you what has fallen out of being latest. You'll also get a notification if you have them enabled in your Jamf Pro instance. When a new software title, it's already in patch reporting. You get notified when a new one comes out, and then you can make your adjustments there. So you can go into the patch policies and adjust if you want, if you already have the package.
Okay. And you can't trigger a patch policy with a trigger value or anything.
Trigger a patch policy.
From a policy.
I mean, you can API it.
Okay.
That's definitely an option. All of patch software titles and patch policies have an API endpoint for all the management of it.
Is that already in?
It's already in there.
Great. Okay. Thanks.
Hi. Thank you. How are the packages stored on the end machines, and can you cache a package ahead of time, say in an environment that has limited bandwidth to do it after hours, something like that?
Currently, the repository is the same as your existing infrastructure, so your master distribution point or your distribution point for that machine. We don't have a caching set up, but it's downloaded whenever the patch policy goes out. So.
I guess you could, in theory, just use a standard policy to cache the package initially, but then you'd have to create an additional patch policy to actually run and install it.
Thank you.
Are there best practices for creating patch packages, like either downloading a new installer or taking a before and after of after you did an in-app upgrade or something like that?
Depends on what it is, but
Okay.
in general, using the vendor's PKG and distributing it,
Okay.
or capturing the .app. Google Chrome's a good example of that, where it's basically portable.
Hi there. Good afternoon. Two quick questions. First question on patches that require that the app be force quit. Is there something running in the background to prevent the user from immediately relaunching the app? Like, will the binary prevent the app from being relaunched and force quit out of it until the patch policy is complete?
No.
Okay. Question number two. Is there a easy way within the patch management that you have these 42 pieces of software, of an easy way of within JSS having a link to grab the actual package for the update so you can go ahead and then upload it into the JSS?
Is there a way to?
I'm sorry. So like Google Chrome, for example, is there a link to Google's repository to grab the latest package for updating, or are you still asking us to go out and use our resources to find the latest version?
Still use your own resources to do it. Google's a good one because it's easy download link, but
like Adobe, I'm thinking like Adobe being like a prime suspect.
Yeah, you'd still have to go out and find that version and then download it and put it in the JSS. We don't have a solution for that at the moment.
Okay.
The 4 o'clock session might be enlightening for that.
Thanks.
Hey, it's me again.
Hey.
So you mentioned using the API. I'm kind of curious though, with the Jamf command line tool with using policy-ID, can you call to the patch policy that way?
Yes.
Excellent.
There's a new verb called Jamf patch. It's actually executed as part of every policy check-in run, but there is Jamf patch ID.
Fantastic.
Oh, all right.
Yes, I had a question regarding the patch policy. You said that it can actually call on the actual package. What about calling on like an actual script? Just
No,
because the question was similar to him, where he said he uses the Jamf helper, which we also use the Jamf helper in order to notify the actual clients of an actual update or something that's about to install, so it gives them an option to defer.
That is, and I know people do use, actually I know a few in this room, that use scripts instead of packages to get their apps, and it's a great feature request. We don't have it in the current iteration though.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, what he said.
Couple of questions real quick. Closer, okay. How do I sing, guys? Good, yeah?
Beautiful.
Should I start singing? The identify, when you first launch it, does it identify only the applications that are in Casper admin, or does it scan the network and get what users have already installed, like from the inventory?
Yeah, that first run there where I refreshed the screen after it was loading for a while, and it took longer than I thought it would. That's all coming from inventory data, with the exception of titles that require extension attributes. Some of the titles in there, when you add them, they require you to accept an extension attribute, and some, as we know, the extension attributes don't pre-fill. You have to wait for the next inventory run. So you'll get all the ones that have, Google Chrome's a good example because it doesn't have an extension attribute. It's all inventory-based data, and so it just populates.
Interesting. I guess I was confused about where would the package come from, and you said that we still need to download the package and install it.
Yeah,
as
same
the policy
process.
versus patch. Were Jamf actually test it and then make it available?
Sorry, the current process for downloading and packaging and uploading is still the same as it always was. We just give the ability to attach it to specific versions to deploy it that way. We're not providing PKGs at this time, but the session from Ben Toms would help out with that quite a bit.
Great, thank you.
Hey, you associate a package that you download as the appropriate version to be referenced. What about a DMG?
What about an imaging?
A DMG.
Oh, DMG, yep.
What else?
Anything that shows up in the packages section of the JSS.
Okay.
Hi there. So currently we have email reporting set up so that when somebody does fail that policy, you get an email alert that says that. Can we limit that to like the 3 retries that we will be having available? So instead of giving an error email for every single error, but only getting it after the 3 failed?
You're actually not getting notified on failures in patch policies, so there's
Okay.
that.
Is that going to be in it then?
That's a great feature request.
Okay.
Hey, you're never gonna get off this stage, no?
We might have to talk after.
Does self-service show how many days left there is until it's gonna automatically install patch policy? So you set a timer, right, and you can defer. So you can see, can you see the number of days and hours left before the policy runs?
If you're putting it into self-service, it's going to be end-user interaction. So it's kind of like the same as trigger policy, like policy triggers now. If it's in self-service, the end user is the trigger, so they would update it.
So those would be different policies.
Right, yeah. If you wanted it to install automatically, you would not ever put it in self-service.
Okay.
In self-service, you'll get a, you must close these apps, and then it'll say, it'll warn you that this app needs to close first before installing.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, well, I think that's the last call for questions. If anybody has anything else, it sounds like there's a couple other sessions tomorrow and Thursday.
4 o'clock, Ben Toms is doing a session right after this. And 1:30, there is a product session by John Miller.
Wonderful. Otherwise, in about 40 minutes, we have long-term certificate management in this room. And thanks so much, Bram and Kat, for presenting.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.